There's nothing more dangerous than someone with a good idea and zero experience. Because in their head, everything's gonna work perfectly. Until reality shows up and says, hey, quick question. Have you ever actually done this before?
May we ask, how have your patients fared in the past?
My patients will have done very well.
Wait a second, did you just use the future pluperfect? I was a substitute English teacher.
All right, so today's episode is one of those where the premise is really strong right out of the gate. You've got Mindy starting her own fertility practice, trying to prove she can do this on her own, while also being wildly in over her head. And that combination, confidence mixed with just a little bit of desperation, is exactly where this show tends to thrive. Because when Mindy's backed into a corner, she doesn't get cautious. She gets creative. And sometimes that works out, and sometimes it leads to her making decisions that spiral very quickly. So with that in mind, welcome back to The Rank. I'm John, and today we're going to be ranking the 18th episode of the third season of the Mindy Project titled Fertility Bites. Written by Jeremy Bronson and Chris Schlecker, and directed by Nisha Ganatra. Let's find out how this one stacked up, starting with the episode overview. We open with the classic bit that I love on this show. It's a voiceover from Mindy, but it's actually her talking to people. In this case, she's talking about how difficult it is to start a new business. And we get a vignette of her not having time for Danny, where he's cooked her breakfast and she just grabs the bacon off the plate and says thanks and leaves. We also see her accosting Kris Jenner at a book signing, because as a fertility doctor, Mindy says that Chris's womb is a national treasure. Anyway, the best part about this voiceover exposition is that she's telling this to her coworkers on a subway train. And when we see that's where they are, Danny's like telling Mindy to hurry it up. But why on a subway train? Well, Mindy has something to unveil. Are they ready? Beverly says, I've been ready since I woke up here. Anyway, what Mindy wants to unveil is an advertisement that she bought. She's got her practice advertised on the train. You know, it's like words that you'd expect, right? But then it's a picture of her next to those words. And she's got these crazy bright blue eyes. And then Tamara's gonna remark upon them as well. Danny's even gonna say she looks like a werewolf. But that's the cold open. Now we're gonna head into the story. And right away, we're gonna find out that Dr. Bergdahl, the new doctor in the practice, has done more procedures than anybody else combined. Of course, then he's gonna make a snide comment about people taking too many breaks or whatever. But Mindy couldn't care less. She's essentially like, yeah, good for you. Imagine doing that all while you're pregnant and starting a new business. And this is where we find out that she's made everyone buy merch for her new practice. And Morgan is super thrilled about his hat. It's bright pink, and he says he loves the color because it's the longest he's ever gone without getting hit by a car. So essentially, the A story is Mindy's business. So what's the B story going to be? Well, in the next scene, we're going to find out, because Tamara is going to get everyone's attention in the break room by saying, excuse me, I've got an interruption. Not an announcement, an interruption. But basically, her and Morgan have come up with a fundraiser, the goal of which is to get to $250,000. And they have one of those thermometer things to show how far they've come. What's it for? Well, it's just for her and Morgan. They're poor, according to them, and they think the doctors should pitch in $50,000 each just to get the ball rolling. Bergdahl is clearly not into all this, but he's also kind of a dick to Morgan and Tamara. Now, I don't disagree with him in this instance. Like, Morgan says that an office is a family, and Bergdahl's like, no, a family is a family. Completely agree. However, he comes back in the door and he's like, hey, can one of you nurses make me a sandwich? And then to the other doctors, he's like, hey, the nurses are making sandwiches. You guys want anything? So that's where he's being a dick. But we're going to go back to the A story, and we're going to see that Mindy is struggling to find her first patient. She's actually sleeping at her desk, and then Morgan comes in and wakes her up. She's got her first patient, and in walks a much older lady who seemed to genuinely want to try to conceive and carry a baby. But Mindy says it's a prank and makes Morgan kick her out. And on top of that, she's been striking out with trying to have the Schulman doctors recommend her as well. Even Danny can't convince a patient to see Mindy. She hasn't ever had a patient, so people are reluctant to give her a shot. Mindy is pissed at Danny, of course. He doesn't know what he could have done, lie to the woman about Mindy's experience? Of course, that's exactly what Mindy thinks she should be doing. And then Danny, in way of apology, offers to make Mindy a salad, which even I knew was a mistake. Like, Danny, have you met this woman? She does not want a salad. But we're gonna head back to the B story. And we're in the locker room with Danny and Dr. Bergdahl. And Danny is trying to subtly hint to Bergdahl that he stinks. I mean, it's not that subtle. Oh, wow, look at this. I got 2 deodorants, but I only need 1. But Bergdahl is not getting the not-so-subtle hint. He's like, no thanks, I couldn't even stand it when my wife put potpourri in the bathroom. Luckily, though, the stupid cat ate it, so that took care of 2 problems. Damn, dude. But Jeremy's gonna come into this scene now also, and he's gonna make it very clear to the audience that Bergdahl stinks. I mean, this guy must smell really bad. But instead of bringing up the stench, Jeremy is gonna bring up the fact that the support staff have been complaining about it. And Bergdahl's like, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry you're having to deal with that. And the way he says it, you just know that he's gonna go and do something he shouldn't, which is exactly what he does. He goes into the break room hot, yelling at Beverly, Morgan, and Tamara. And Morgan's like, look, we'll call it all even if you just agree to donate to our fundraiser. But Bergdahl just rips up their thermometer drawing, and then Morgan's like, no, now I don't know how much we've raised. But they've had it. They go to Jeremy and they tell him that either Bergdahl goes or they go. So we leave the B story after the ultimatum and head back over to Mindy. Morgan is massaging her feet and Mindy's feeling pretty down. But Morgan's gonna cheer her up. How? By telling her she's got good feet. And not just any good feet, but good enough that she could put them on a fetish website and make some real money. And Mindy is gonna be like, thank you. That's the nicest thing that anyone's ever said to me. But basically, Mindy is just desperate to get a client. And suddenly Morgan has a eureka moment. He knows just who could be their first client. Who is it? His cousin Lou. That's right, Rob McElhaney is back. And when he meets with Mindy, he says his sperms are bad and that it took a lot of courage for him to come there. But basically, he's all set to work with Mindy. He just has one question, and it's an experience question. Of course, Mindy just sort of bounces around the question without answering it, and it seems like they're gonna make it through, but Lou says, he's just gotta do his dude diligence. And Sandra, his partner, she's gonna do her chick diligence. And it looks like it's gonna end up being a no-go, because they find out that she hasn't helped anyone yet, but then she lies. She says that she got herself pregnant, and then the story becomes that Danny is shooting blanks, just like Lou. So now we're getting to the point where the B and the A story are gonna meet. The nurses are walking on the street on their way to Mindy's grand opening party for her practice, when they see Dr. Bergdahl asleep in his car, and he's clearly living out of his car. So naturally, they start feeling bad. No wonder he's so cantankerous and smelly. But before we see the nurses arrive at the party, we head there ourselves. Wouldn't you know it, Mindy's got a crowd. But it turns out that it's because Morgan placed a $10,000 ad on Glue. And while Mindy finds that to be a very concerningly large number for an ad, Morgan's like, don't worry, we'll just expense it. And Mindy's like, that's to me. If you expense it, I'm paying for the expense. But what we also see is Lou circulating and talking to Danny. And it becomes clear that Lou has told pretty much everybody about Danny. But Danny is clueless still. And then the nurses are going to confront Jeremy at the party. They ask him if he's actually done something as stupid as listen to them about firing Bergdahl. And it turns out he did. So they start chastising him for doing so. So Jeremy's like, fine, hire him back if you want to. But back to the Danny problem. Danny is going to grab the mic and give Mindy a toast, which Mindy is trying to prevent him from doing. And there are so many things that could be misconstrued about what he says that it's just awesome. Like he says he's so impressed with what Mindy's doing. I mean, being able to do this all on her own while she's pregnant, he just can't conceive. Or how it all started from a guy in San Francisco. And when she got back, the seed was planted. And then on top of all of that, he goes to uncork a bottle of champagne and the cork just sort of falls out. It doesn't pop. So when he finally ends his toast, he walks off and Mindy is like, let's not talk about who's fertile and infertile with each other. But we see him talking to Lou again and it clicks, right? Danny's knows now. And Lou is going to yell at Mindy, everything I know about your reproductive health is a lie. To which Mindy is going to say, okay, that's a little dramatic, Lou. And then Lou says, I took a drama class at the Y. But basically, Lou tells Mindy she's a scumbag, and Danny informs everyone the way they actually conceived, which was by banging on New Year's Eve under the Lion King banner. But that doesn't really make sense timeline-wise, does it? Because she went to Stanford for like 8 months starting in January. But before we get any closure there, we're gonna follow the nurses as they go to tell Bergdahl that he's got his job back. But when they see him still sleeping in his car, Morgan becomes convinced that he's dead and then just breaks his window. But we're gonna find out what's going on with him at this point. He's on the outs with his wife, and actually getting his own place would make it feel like it's a permanent problem. I mean, I kind of felt bad for the guy. But he's showing his vulnerability, so Morgan wants to reciprocate it and says that he's pretty sure that his grandmother is his mom. And Bergdahl's like, no, we don't need to do this. But then Bergdahl is going to give a heartfelt apology to all of them. except that he doesn't get a single one of their names right. But when he's done, Beverly says, well, it's about time you learned our names. He also finds out during this interaction that Mindy's apartment is basically free because she never stays there. So in the next scene, Bergdahl goes into Mindy's office and he says that I'm going to start giving the hard sell to my patients to go to your fertility clinic. But in exchange, you're going to let me stay in your apartment. And Mindy agrees. And then she's like, feel free to use everything in the apartment. The shower, the oven, the shower. Again, hinting that he stinks. But once again, Bergdahl doesn't get it, even though he says he does. But what he thinks she's hinting at is that there's a camera in the shower, and he's like, don't worry, I'll give you a show. But this leads to the end, which is the reconciliation between Mindy and Dan. She's apologizing to him, and he's just like, how could you spread lies about my guy? My guy is the best. And then Mindy is basically going to say a guy's dream sentence. She's like, I can't believe I spoke ill of an organ that's brought so much happiness to me and lots of other women. I mean, come on. I would definitely not be mad at my significant other anymore if she said that shit to me. But on top of that, Mindy tells Danny that she's ready to move in, which Danny's really happy about. It's a sweet little moment. And then Mindy's gonna be like, I want to change the decor in here. And she suggests themes. Arabian Nights? No. Moulin Rouge? No. Romeo and Juliet? No. Great Gatsby? And Danny's like, okay, enough with Baz Luhrmann. I just love the idea that Danny would know that she's referencing Baz Luhrmann movies. But that's the whole episode. Let's see how it ranked.
Oh, wait.
So the rankings are I ranked the episode based on 5 categories: story, acting, dialogue, episode coherence, and character relatability. I rank it on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. Then I have a laugh counter where I tally up the amount of times the episode made me laugh. 1 point per laugh out loud gets added to the score. But before I dive into the rankings, I just want to say if you're enjoying this episode, please leave a like down below. It really does help me out. But without further ado, the first category is story. So the A story is Mindy trying to find her footing as she starts a brand new business. And the B story is that Dr. Bergdahl is stinky. There's not really any resolution to the A story, and it's quite broad, whereas the B story is very narrow, but at least does have some resolution. I gave it a 3.25. So the next category is acting. And the acting was good in this episode. I thought the main players were great. I can't tell if Rob McElhenney's acting in this is good, or if he's just playing a slightly stranger version of Mac. Either way, it's not necessarily bad, but I wouldn't submit it to the Academy for an Emmy nomination either. I gave the acting a 4. So that brings us to dialogue. By the measure of funniness, this is fantastic. It made me laugh a bunch. The characters are fun and playful and goofy, while still having just enough gravity to it so that it still feels mostly grounded. That being said, it felt like they didn't really button things up well with this one. Like, it was funny, but they seemed to sacrifice story to get silly jokes in. I gave it a 3.75. So that leads us to episode coherence. Okay, so there are actually kind of a lot of problems with coherence in this episode. And it's mostly centered around Morgan because he shows up in the A and B stories constantly. Now, you can explain it away as maybe they're just doing it at different times during most of the episode, but there's an outlier that's egregious. He's both inside the party, telling Mindy that he placed a $10,000 Gloop ad, while also being outside with Tamara and Beverly, seeing Dr. Bergdahl asleep in the car. Also, Danny says the baby was conceived on New Year's Eve, but she found out she was pregnant while she was still in San Francisco on her fellowship. And she was in San Francisco for 8 months, starting in January. So either she's nearly a year pregnant, or they're saying that she stayed after the fellowship for months, then got pregnant, and we're now more than a year past the fellowship. Either way, it doesn't really make that much sense. I gave it a 2. So that brings us to character relatability. I think Danny getting upset about Mindy lying about his spermies is understandable. Dr. Bergdahl's situation and excuse was certainly relatable. I think the nurses being upset with his treatment of them is also relatable. This all makes it sound like it was a super relatable episode. But at the same time, it didn't pull you in with a ton of empathy for the characters. Like, it was a nice moment at the end with Bergdahl and the nurses and Danny and Mindy. It just didn't feel as strong as it has in the past. I gave it a 3.5. All right, so not the best ratings, but if it has a good laugh counter, it'll still stay in the top 3 tiers. And Mindy always has a chance of having a good laugh counter, and that is the case in this one. It got me 18 times. So that puts the grand total of the episode at a 34.5, which makes it an I'd watch it again. As for the series average, it drops down a little bit to a 36.27, remaining in the holy grail. And if you're ranking along with me, drop your score in the comments. So thanks for listening and or watching. Check out my other Mindy Project ranking episodes or any of my other sitcom or movie ranking episodes on this channel. Remember to subscribe, like, and comment. For up-to-date rankings, check out my website at therankpodcast.com, which is actually up and working now, finally. And you can also email me there at either info or john@therankedpodcast.com. And if you really want to support the show, you can head to our newly revamped Patreon site, patreon.com/therankedpodcast. But I will leave you with this. I actually had to ask my friend Zach to help me come up with this joke, and he really didn't want to do it, but as it turns out, resistance is fertile. Because it's a fertility clinic.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Because as a fertility doctor, she claims, God damn it.
That's okay. Take your time.